morning when we have our Ndalama Insights radio show. A very important show indeed, especially for those of you that are into investing and would like to see your wealth grow. It's always exciting, and we talk about making smart financial decisions. I'm Leslie Sinyangwe, and of course, in the studio this morning, I am joined by Mukonki Mukonkela. It is a good morning, Mukonki, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Leslie. Good to have you back
Oh yeah, we haven't actually.
after such a long time.
Yeah, we haven't had a proper conversation in
Yeah,
quite a while, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Where's your coffee?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pushing to reach your level where I can have coffee happily like this.
Yeah.
Good coffee, by the way. It smells like a
Mhm.
summer coffee or something, like one of those nice good coffee.
It is, but you know what? Kasama coffee now is getting out of our price range. Sorry
Not,
to
not that,
say.
not that it should be getting more affordable with all these investments we're doing and talking about. Yeah. Anyway, today we're basically going to be talking about one of the most powerful concepts in personal finance, and that is pay yourself first. This is a principle that's often overlooked, but when applied correctly, it can truly transform your financial life. Um, let's start by breaking down this concept for our listeners. Okay, what exactly does pay yourself first mean, and why is it considered the golden rule of money?
So, thank you, Leslie, and good morning to everyone listening and those online. Pay yourself first is a very simple principle, but it's really, really powerful. I first learned about pay your first from a book written by Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if you've heard of it, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's the first time I heard about the concept of pay yourself first. Now you're covering my my viewers can't see me one. Let's try to do this.
Yeah,
Is this okay? No. Okay. How about this?
Yeah, we're trying to get
Okay,
into the right position.
great.
Okay, now we're good to go.
Yeah. So I first learned about the principle of pay yourself first from a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, written by Robert Kiyosaki. But I later discovered that actually this principle came from a very small book called The Richest Man in Babylon. Leslie, I don't know if you've heard of this book.
Yes, and I actually read it.
So you've read it, right? It's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
small book, but it's got a lot of nuggets in that. That book is a must read for anyone who wants to build wealth. So I recommend it as a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite. You need to read it. So pay yourself first really is about setting aside a proportion of your income. So if you get a salary, for example, you get 1,000 kwacha, you need to set aside at least 10% of that amount every month, put it in a savings account, and then spend the remainder of that 1,000 kwacha. So in this case, you remain with 900 kwacha. And you need to do this before you can pay for any expenses such as rent or any purchases. So you need to set aside this amount before you do anything. That is what pay yourself first is. And very simple but powerful concept if you can actually stick with it consistently, as you're going to discover today.
Mhm. Now, it sounds simple enough, but many people might feel that they don't have enough left over to save after covering their regular expenses. How do you recommend people get started with this concept?
So a lot of people do complain. They say, but I don't have enough money to set aside. So how do I apply this concept? For me, I think it's about priorities. And if you start thinking about setting aside that 10% or even 20% aside as a priority and consider it as a non-negotiable expense. So you're setting it as in order for you to build wealth later on. So the way to look at this is like paying rent to your landlord. It's non-negotiable. Just think about your landlord. You never tell your landlord to say, I don't have money this month consecutively for 3 months. They will check you out of their premises. That's how you need to consider setting aside that 10%. It becomes a non-negotiable expense, just like you pay rent or electricity and water. If you don't pay your water bills or your ZESCO bills, you'll be cut off. That's how you need to consider paying yourself first. So treat it as a commitment. And you need to ensure that it's an amount that is workable for you. Like I always say, personal finance is really, really a personal issue. So no one can dictate to you to say, set aside 10% of your budget or 20% or 30%. It is really up to you. So you need to have analyzed how you make your money and how you spend it and see what percentage you can afford to set aside monthly and start setting aside that amount. This may require you to do some kind of deduct. So let's say, for example, when you get your salary, you need to tell your bankers to say that whenever I get this 100,000 kwacha that I get every month, 10% has to go straight away to this savings account or investment account. I don't really want to see it. And then I will spend the 90,000. If you are able to look at it from this angle, you will not have an issue. That will allow you to live with a balance. And I also like to say, paying yourself first actually also gives you the motivation to work harder. If your income is not enough, if you're able to set aside 10% to find that this income is not enough, it actually gives you ideas of how you can work harder to improve your income or increase your income so that it's much more. So that is how I look at this entire concept.
It sounds like a simple approach, but it's easy to see how it can pay off. Now, what are the key benefits of paying yourself first?
So there are a number of benefits. First of all, the discipline that it creates in you. You know, if you're able to create an habit of setting aside a percentage of your income, 10%, 20% regularly into a savings account, it helps you to create that financial discipline. So you know that you can always set aside money into a savings or investment account that is going to help you build wealth later on. So for me, I think the very first important thing is the habit that it creates. You know, habits are repetitive. Every time when you do something regularly, it becomes like you're building a muscle. So it becomes entrenched in you and it becomes automatic. And if as a wealth builder, you want consistency in whatever you do. So setting money aside every month regularly, paying yourself first, helps you to build this habit. Secondly, it also ensures that you achieve your financial goals. Can you imagine if you're setting aside a certain amount of money and one of your financial goals is to build a house? If regularly you can set aside 10% of your income and knowing that in the next 5 years, I want to build a house, you are building money or saving money specifically for that purpose. So paying yourself first, saving money allows you to achieve your financial goals, one of which could be building a house. And we've got several other financial goals that you might have. So that is what this setting aside of money helps you to do. Now, I know for many of us, again, it's something that we struggle to understand or to try to implement. But as I've said, if you can consider this as a non-negotiable expense, you can take advantage of this concept. And it is the one that is later on going to pull you from the situation you are in. Because a lot of people again say, but I don't have enough money, so I can't do this. You will forever be stuck in that situation as long as you don't pay yourself first. You will work for 100 years, 20 years. You will never come out of it. Believe me, I think the richest man in Babylon was very wise to have said, set a tenth of your earnings, set aside, save it. He was very wise to have said that.
Definitely. I imagine it also helps reduce the stress that comes with financial uncertainty, especially in times of emergencies, right? Yeah.
So, you know, emergencies come when we don't expect them, right? So if you are able to set money aside, save money, a percentage of your income, whatever you make, when an emergency pops up, it's easy for you not to panic and manage that emergency using the savings that you've accumulated. Very, very important. Emergencies do the most adverse thing to affect them financially. They go to pay their loans, they borrow money at exorbitant fees, and this worsens their financial situation. So if you're able to set aside money regularly, build some emergency fund, this is the money that is going to help you even during emergencies and will allow you to pass through that period with less stress compared to somebody who's got nothing at all. They live paycheck to paycheck. Whenever the money comes in from your salary, you spend it all before even the end of the month. Mid-month, the money has gone. Maybe even the first week of you getting paid, all the money has completely gone. And then you've got 3 more weeks to go to month end and you start waiting for another salary. That you're not doing yourself a favor. So like I've said, doesn't matter how much money you get, set a small amount aside.
Yeah. Now, for those listening, might be wondering how to implement this into your life. What are some practical steps that people can take to start paying themselves first?
Good question. And this is where we apply budgeting, Leslie. So budgeting is a very simple concept. No matter how people might try to complicate it, it's really about understanding how much money you make and your expenditure. So if you are able to do a simple calculation of your money coming in, either through your salary or through your side jobs or whatever you do part-time, calculate how much that income is, and then deduct your expenses. And as you're deducting your expenses, I want you to take note of your needs and wants. Because expenses, we have the essentials. Those are the needs. I need to pay my rent. I need to pay for my utilities, water and electricity. And then I've got some wants. I perhaps want to go watch a movie once in a while, go eat at a nice fancy restaurant with my family, go for a vacation. Those are wants. So what I want you to do is, after considering your income, deduct all your needs, all your needs, yes, and then consider a little bit of your wants, but ensure that there's a proportion that is left for saving. And in fact, instead of doing it the way I've explained it, you can even do it the opposite way. You can start by 10% goes away. I remain with 900 kwacha. From this 900 kwacha, how am I going to spend it on my needs and then my wants? That way, that is why we say pay yourself first, because you're setting aside money for your future needs first, and then you are spending the balance, and you ensure that you live within the balance. So that's the baseline, really. Start by understanding how much money you make, how much money you need to spend, and whether there's space for you to pay yourself first. And even if there's no space, if you discover that from your analysis, create the space. That is what I'm saying. Create it. Automatically set aside 10% and live within the balance.
Now, I think the hard part is getting, you've got your 1,000 kwacha, you go with, or your 10,000 kwacha. When you're drawing it, you see a full 10,000 kwacha. So every time you have a problem, you remember there's 10,000 kwacha. But how do you then, set it up in such a way that it's automatic, so you don't have to think about it? When you go, you should see 9,000. You shouldn't see 10,000.
Let's look at what you've just said, Leslie. The problem is what? Every time you know that there's a 10,000 kwacha that you've kept somewhere.
It's somewhere there.
So you want to go and use it.
You want to use it. So how do you then, sort of take it out, controlling it so that you don't see it and you just see 9,000?
So I think one thing you can do when you open that savings account that we are talking about, where you need to automatically be directing that money from your income, you need to open a savings account. Ensure that you don't have a debit card to that savings account. That's one way, because many of us like to go to the ATM. We've got debit cards for every bank account, but for this purpose, don't get a debit card, so that it avoids you going to the ATM and withdrawing the money. And also, for some banks, they do create deterrents, such as the bank charges, high bank charges. You need to monitor your bank charges. If you are constantly withdrawing from this savings account, that should prevent you from, abusing this account, because it's supposed to be for building money. So for me, I think the way I've disciplined myself in terms of accounts that I don't want to access money from is I don't get a debit card. So I can only go into the branch if I want to withdraw money. And that is very difficult. Imagine spending, banks nowadays, you can spend even 2 hours on a queue just trying to withdraw 500 kwacha. So just don't get the debit card.
So that does help, doesn't it? So it's about automation, and not having things like quick access, basically, to your money.
Precisely. That's absolutely right, Leslie. So automation is very important. Give an instruction to your bankers to do a deduct whenever you get income. Even for those that do get irregular incomes, like if you've got a business and you are not salarized, so you don't get a monthly salary, you can also create some kind of consistency. Whenever you get income, ensure that a proportion of it goes to savings. Very important, yeah.
The way we decided just goes to bonds, or something like that, because then you know that it's gone, you can't touch it.
Exactly. And now you're taking it on So what you said, Leslie, is actually taking it on to the next level, because saving is just setting aside money, but the key really is in investing. So if you've built up a substantial amount of money, you can then buy an investment like a bond, a 2-year bond, a 3-year bond, a 5-year bond. It is not easy for you to liquidate these bonds. So that way, it actually also disciplines you to attain your goals. Imagine if you want to build a house in 3 years' time, and you will buy a GRZ bond with a tenure of 3 years. You've paid yourself first, deducted 10% of whatever money you made, bought a 3-year bond, knowing that in 3 years I want to build this house. You're setting aside money for a future goal that will enable you to achieve that future goal. So that is another. So now you're taking it top notch. You're going a step ahead. Yes.
Now, we're slowly running out of time, but it's okay. We all know that life has a way of throwing curveballs. Sometimes paying yourself first can feel difficult. Maybe you can also combine it with the issue of credit as well. Where you've got to pay credit. So what do you do? What do you do? Do you pay yourself first, or do you sort out your credit? Do you sort out these barriers you're facing, the curveballs? The emergencies that just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
How do you balance it?
So let's look at debt. So for those that have got loans, how do you pay yourself first? It's a very important question to consider. And the thing really is, if you've got a loan, you need to consider the interest rate that you're paying on that loan. So would it be wise for you to pay a loan on which you are paying, let's say, 25% interest per annum, compared to setting aside money in a savings account that is earning you about, let's be generous, 1% interest? So which would be wiser, paying off the loan first or setting aside the money? So it would definitely be wiser for you to pay off the debt as quickly as you can, because debt builds up the longer you keep it. So if you can pay off your debt as quickly as possible, that way you can have money that you can set aside. But regardless of this, I think it's also important that you set at least a small percentage of whatever income you're making, set it aside for savings, and also prioritize the repayment of the debt. So it may require you to perhaps deduct other expenditure lines in your life. So if you love, going out every weekend, it might require you to reduce on that expenditure so that you can pay off the debt, as well as you set aside a small amount of money for savings.
Wow. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful, conversation, Koki. But if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice about, paying yourself first, what would it be?
So let me just target the young ones, the youths. There's a whole discussion about youths and who's a youth and all of that. It's so interesting. But I like to say, come on, as long as you are youthful at heart, like some of us that want to be youthful forever, you are a youth. It doesn't matter how old you are. But anyway, let me target this to the younger ones. 20s, you're just starting your job. Paying yourself first and investing wisely is going to allow you to utilize the power of time. And by setting aside money in proper investments and savings accounts, you can actually utilize the power of compound interest. And you can start from 1,000 kwacha. As long as you don't withdraw it and you reinvest the interest you're earning on this investment or savings account, you discover that the money starts growing on its own. You don't even need to be adding on top. So as a young person, if you're listening, you're in your 20s, in your 30s, your parents probably never tell you this. Set aside a small amount of money and don't withdraw it. And come back and tell me in 5 years' time how much that amount of money would have grown. You are young, you can utilize the power of time. It's going to work for you in terms of compounding. So pay yourself first. Everybody, it doesn't matter how much money you get. If you really want to start building real wealth, you need to set aside 10%, 20%, 30% of your income, depending on your circumstances.
Great. Well, Koki, thank you so much for making time for us this morning.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Brenda, Leonard, David, and everybody else who was online.
Great. Listeners, remember, the path to financial freedom starts with small, consistent steps. Make sure to pay yourself first, and the future will thank you. Until next time, stay financially savvy.
You have been listening to the Dialog Business Show. Brought to you by Crystal Partners Africa.